Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Git Good at OpenRCT2 Tycoon 2. In this episode I will show you how to make a realistic looking inverted coaster. Now, with inverted coaster I actually mean the B&M inverted coaster and not the compact inverted coaster, which is based off the Vekoma suspended looping coaster. So let me find it. Here it is, inverted roller coaster. So this is what the video will be about, and not the compact inverted roller coaster. That will be something for a different episode. Alright. Now let me turn off the rain. And let's get to work on our coaster. Now, of course, you have to start with a station. Always put the station off the ground, just for any coaster really. 4 or 5 tiles should be enough. After the station, sometimes these coasters, well the real ones, immediately go into a chain lift. Sometimes there's first a bit of a curve before it really starts. Actually, let's drop it down a bit and do a 180-degree turn. We'll quickly change the color because I don't really like this this color. Let's make it purple. Alright. Then after that, there's always a chain lift, of course. I think this is high enough. You shouldn't make it too high. Of course, if you want to have a larger layout with a large loop, you could make it bigger, but typically this will be high enough. Now, most of the older models, they start with a pre-drop, so just a small dip down. And only after that they start the real drop. But first let's do something else, because something all these coasters have is a catwalk under the station, under the chain lift. So in order to make that, let's disable clearance checks, and then we'll just put some wooden coaster track right under the lift hill. And with that we emulate the catwalk that's usually right under the lift hill. First you can give it a nice color. Yeah, it doesn't really matter how we color it now. So yeah, that's typically the start of an inverted coaster. So station, turn or no turn, that's up to you. And a catwalk right under the lift hill. Now after this pre-drop, you can also do it without pre-drop, it's up to you, but many of these real inverted coasters have them. And after that there's always a curved drop. So these inverted coasters always have a curved drop. Now there's several ways to do these. You could start with a really tight curve like this, and then finish up with an inclined downwards curve like this, or you could do it more simple. Just make 2 or more curved drops like this. Yeah, how you do it is really up to you, but there's really always a curved drop. Sometimes there's even a 270-degree turn, then you could go under the lift hill like this. But yeah, that's up to your creativity how you do it. For this one, let's just start with the example I showed. Well, the example I started with. course you'll want to have keep them off the ground a little bit. Now the first element on one of these inverted coasters, I think on 95% of these coasters, the first element is a loop. I think there's one or two exceptions. There's Nemesis in Alton Towers, which doesn't start with a loop. And I think there's Banshee, and there's an upcoming one, but the other ones all start with a loop. So that's what we'll also do here. I think it may be a little bit high for this loop. Yeah, I think it's a little bit too high to start with a loop. I think I'll just do like this. Now if you want to know, you can see of course these height markers. If you want to, on the loop there are no height markers, so you cannot really see how high it is. You'll want it to be a little bit lower than the highest point of the track. So what I typically do is I just build a half loop, and then you can actually see how far or how high the top of the loop will be. So it's 18 meters, we start at 25.5, so there's 7.5 meters of height difference, which should be acceptable. Alright, let's do it like that. Now these coasters usually follow a simple formula in most cases. So station, lift hill, the curve drop. Usually the first element is a loop, and then after that there's 2 or 3 more inversions. Well, you could try to make a 0G roll. Of course you cannot make actual 0G rolls in Rollercoaster Tycoon 2. That element only got added in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3. But what you typically see people do is just make a hill upwards and make an inline twist and then make it go downwards again. Like that. Actually, let's make it a little bit steeper. Now, one popular model that's actually cloned quite a few times in the parks is the Batman model. That one has a loop, then a 0G roll, and then another loop. Oops, that's a little bit too big. Another loop. That's something you could do, for example. Another thing you'll see quite often on these coasters is a Cobra roll. So let's I think we can make a Cobra roll here. Let's do a little bit of a turn here. And let's go up here. And Van Hawk's corkscrew to the left. And there we have our Cobra roll. Let's go under the coaster here. Now, many people build these coasters high off the ground, but what you'll often see on these unreal versions of this coaster is that they actually stay close to the ground for quite a big part of the layout. So yeah, that actually makes it feel like you're going at a much higher speed, and makes these coasters really fun to ride. Now, one element you'll also see quite often on these coasters is a helix. So quite often there's like 3 or 4 inversions, after that there's a helix or a brake run. Typically these coasters have 5 or 6, well 4 to 6 inversions throughout the track. So that's usually a good number to stick to. So like I said, we have these inversions here. Let's do another element. Let's put a helix here. So we'll just make a curved drop downwards. You could also make a curved drop or a curved track upwards. So let's continue it here. And there we go. Now we have a nice helix. Now I don't actually know if the coaster will make it through the track at a good speed. So let's just give it a quick roll to see how it goes. So there we go. Go down the first drop. Through the loop. Goes at a nice speed. To the 0G roll. Through the Cobra roll. Also at a good speed. Alright. Perfect. And it goes through the helix here. Alright. Now, if your layout is longer, is quite long, then after the first 4 or 5 elements, you could add a brake run to the right. It's not required, but for a longer layout, it is quite nice and will allow you to have an extra train on the track. So let's, for this example, let's make a brake run. And this is also a nice way to bleed off some speed. So let's put some brakes here. We'll want it to be the same length as the station. We have 5 track pieces here for the station, so let's also do that here. Alright, then we have our brake section. And usually after the brake section you will find 1 or 2 corkscrews and a helix, and then it returns to the station. Or there could be an inline twist in the track. So let's start with a curved drop downwards. Oh yeah, this is just a layout I'm making really quickly. I'm not really putting much thought into how we are going here. So let's make a corkscrew here. And after that, let's do a little helix thing, and then another corkscrew, and then return back to the station. Right now I'm just trying out stuff to see how it will look. Alright, let's do a tight helix here. I mean, we're not going very fast here, so that's an option here. So yeah, the helixes in these coasters can get quite tight. They can be quite intense, and I really like riding these. I've ridden 2 of these coasters in my life so far, and they were both really fun to ride. I've ridden Black Mamba in Phantasialand and Monster in the Walligator Park, and both of them were such good rides. I can really recommend you to seek out these coasters. They're really fun to ride, and I also really like building them. I mean, there's so much you can do with these coasters. All right, so let's see what we did here. So I just started with the station here, made a 180-degree turn, lift hill with a catwalk under it, and a curved drop downwards. You can make a 90-degree curved drop, 180, 270. That's really up to you, but these coasters typically always have a curved drop. Then I started with a loop at the bottom of the track. Well, yeah, they will typically start with a loop, unless you're trying to create a nemesis, for example. But yeah, if the loop's not the first element, it will usually be somewhere else in the track. Then after that I made a 0G roll, then I made a Cobra roll, then after that we did a helix, a brake run, then did a corkscrew, another helix, another corkscrew, and then back to the station. So in the end that's 6 inversions. Now another element you will see sometimes is a Batwing. Well, I will not have a Batwing on this layout, But if you don't know what a Batwing is, so let's quickly make a Batwing here. It's simply a half corkscrew followed by a half loop and another half loop followed by another corkscrew. So that's also a fun element you could add to your ride. You could even start it with a curve. And when you do that, it's always nice if you then have a path here, just so the guests have a clear view of the Batwing. It's a nice eye catcher for the guests. You should do the same at Cobra rolls. I mean, they're really spectacular elements to watch, and it's really nice if your guests can get a clear view of it. So yeah, let's go over some ways to polish this ride. Well, I made a tutorial earlier on transfer tracks. For these coasters, you can of course also make a transfer track. Well, the storage track could be right next to the station here, or it could be right here. It's a shame that it's next to the corkscrew, because it will obstruct the view of it. But this is just an example. Actually, we could just something like this we could do, or we could just make the extra track right next to the station. Alright, then we could put an extra train here. So if you want a train on the storage track, well, I showed it in my previous tutorial. So here we have a train with 9 cars. So let's make it 8 cars. And then we'll make the same train here. Let's disable the vehicle limits. Oh, we need an entrance and an exit. Right, then we have an extra train here. And that extra train is now waiting here nicely. Alright, perfect. And whenever they need it, they will use the transfer track to roll the track, this train onto that sliding track, and then they can use it in the main station. In theory, of course, it won't work in this game. And of course, you could just make some rails above the track. I'm not gonna fully work out the transfer track here, because I did that in the tutorial already. That would be kind of a waste of time. But yeah, it would look something like this. Of course, you'd need to make a structure around it to keep these rails in place. You would need to hide the supports on this element. And then you have a nice transfer track here for your inverted coaster. Now, of course, you need to put it in a nice building. So just use your imagination here. Alright, like I said earlier, these coasters are typically close to the ground for a big part of the ride. Sometimes they're even underground stuff. So yeah, really just you should really put lots of stuff right next to the track. It just makes the riders feel like they're boxed in, and then the ride will feel really fast for them. Typically just color the land under the coaster. put some variation here. You could also put some water under the track at parts. Let's make it a little bit lower here. So let's put some water here. Now you could make foot choppers in the track. So what's a foot chopper? Well, it's basically an element under the track that makes it look like the guests will hit their feet on it. Of course, there's always enough clearance so that it won't actually be possible for the guests to hit it, but the illusion is what counts there. So, for example, you could make a big tree trunk or something. Just use your imagination there. For example, but you could also have another track here. Just something like that. Let's pretend it's a tree trunk. No, and right here at this part, the guests would feel like they might hit their feet here on the track. But yeah, you'll have to use your imagination a bit here for such elements. Basically, you'll want to have lots of stuff around the track to have the best experience for the guests and also to make the best looking inverted coaster. Now, one other thing you could do is for the mid-course brake run, if you have one, but also for the final brake run. So we go to Object Selection and let's find the mini golf. Oh, I already had it selected, my bad. Right, here it is. And right under the brake run, we have to disable support limits, don't forget that. And right here under the track we'll make a platform. And that just adds a little bit of realism to the coaster. You could make some supports under it. But yeah, how you decorate that is up to you. But this is something I like to have on my inverted coasters. Now that's a nice platform where the train can wait, or where a mechanic can work, or something else. You could also make a platforms under the transfer track if you like that. So let's lower it a bit. Oh, I put it at the wrong height. Okay. And you could also do that here. Now there's a nice little platform under the transfer track. You could even extend it towards the station if you like that. But yeah, that's just up to you to get creative here. Now for this chain lift, typically there's not these kind of supports under the coaster. So what you could do here is remove the supports of the wooden coaster. And just use the original supports. Of course, they're only on this side now. Usually for chain lifts, the inverted coaster will have supports on both sides of the track. But with the standard supports, I don't know of an easy way to do that. Alright, this is how you could do it. I don't really like the way this looks. What I sometimes do is just take poles. Let's disable clearance checks for now. Let's hide the original supports here. And we can just make our own supports. And then we take a wooden post fence and just add it on top. Now this will look slightly better in my opinion, but these supports don't look very beefy. They look like thin poles. You could add some of these in between. Oh, I actually messed up there in the middle. Sometimes I just add a few of these. So I would also add poles right next to them. So just continue this pattern, just make another one right next to it. Then you could connect them with these wooden post fences, just to make it a little bit more, make it look a little bit stronger. This is not necessarily very realistic, but it's just a way I like to make them, just to make it look a little bit more, yeah, let's call it beefy. You could also, to make these supports look thicker, you could also just put the poles on all sides. So as you can see, this object, you can place it on 4 different edges. So you can place it on this tile on this edge, and this tile on this edge, this and like this, and like this. And now there's 4 right next to each other, and that will make your support look a little bit thicker. That's one way you can make thicker posts. So if you do this under the coaster, you may make it look a little bit more realistic. Now there's one other item you can use for the supports, under the coaster at least. So you have these poles here. So let's place one here. As you can see, it fits right over the coaster. And then you have these poles, and you can simply put them right next to it. Now, these can be a little bit tricky to work with. You have to make sure the orientation is right. And always just rotate the camera to see if you placed them correctly. Now I will just put the last one partly on the ground, just to connect the final part, and there we have it. So this is also a way you can do your supports. But yeah, how you do it in the end is up to you. Just get creative with it. Now there's also I also saw a coaster which just had like supports like these under the chain lift part. So it just had a few of these towers along the chain lift. So that you could also do it like that. Or you could just keep the original supports. But yeah, really, how you do the supports, it may take some figuring out to find something that works for your coaster. Alright, I will now just decorate the coaster, just put some trees around it. If you make one of your own, you could make it pass through some ruins or other stuff. I will now just quickly make it look nice. Now, I think I will keep it at this. This is far from my best work. Basically also because I just put it down in a few minutes, just spammed trees around it. But yeah, you can do some great work fitting this into the landscape. I will now show you some inverted coasters I have made in other parks, and you can see it also just follows the same formula. Alright, here you can see the inverted coaster I made for the go-karts contest. As you can see here, there's a station here, and made a nice ruined building around it. So first a little drop after the station, then there's the chain lift, again with the wooden coaster track under it to make the catwalk. You can see I made some custom supports here. You can see I put the poles here. I used more poles right next to each other just to make them look thicker, and I actually think this works quite well. So the supports above it, just to keep everything together. Some crossbars here just to support everything. So I think this worked quite well for the supports. Now there's the curve drop down 90 degrees, then a large loop. Here's a sort of a 0-0. Here's a dive loop. I didn't show that one before. It's just inline twist followed by a large loop. Here's a helix right through some ruins. And then here's a brake run, same length as the station with 4 tiles. There's a drop here right over the water. There's a helix followed by a corkscrew. Then it goes right under the path here, and then there's another corkscrew before it returns into the station. Again, also I made a little transfer track here, a storage track, where you can see another train waiting. So yeah, again, same formula, and I think this works really well. Again, lots of decorations around the track, lots of parts where the guests are near buildings or in buildings. Yeah, that's just the key to making these coasters look nice, and also make it look like it would be a nice experience for the guests. Now, there's one more inverted coaster I want to show in this video. So here you can see an inverted coaster that we made for multiplayer round 10. It was a team round. I mostly made this inverted coaster together with Supra the Hedgehog. So here at the bottom you can see the station. From there the train goes up the lift hill, again with wooden coaster track right under the lift hill. You can actually see the wooden coaster track extends a bit under the first drop. That's also something you could do. You can see the custom supports here. This actually used some custom scenery. Then there's the first drop. Again, 90-degree curve, then a steep drop here. And the first element is a loop, like most of these coasters do. Here it's immediately followed by a cobra roll. Here a bit of diagonal track leading into a helix. Then 0-G roll. Then it goes into a brake run, again with a mini golf platform under it. Then after it there's another loop, some more twisty track. Here's an Immelman that it now passes through. And then at the end it finishes with a helix. I really like the look of this helix, it works quite well. And then here at the end you can see some transfer track. So yeah, it's actually some steeplechase track with monorail on top. And then here you can see some storage tracks. But yeah, as you can see, this one again follows that same formula. I think it has 5 or 6 inversions. First element is a loop, curve drop, etc, etc. So yeah, really, I recommend you to give one of these coasters a try. They're really fun to build. When you make them like this, make sure they don't go through the inversions too fast. And you should usually get your stats all around 8 or 9. So yeah, they're just like I said, just try not to make them go too fast through the inversions, and your stats should be okay. Alright, I hope this guide is useful for you. I hope to see you make your own inverted coaster soon. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again in the next one. See you later.